How to Win Arguments. Use Words as Weapons by Alexander Knight. Published by Audiobooks Hub. Introduction. The power of words and argumentation. Arguments are an inevitable part of life. From casual debates over dinner to high-stakes negotiations, we all find ourselves engaged in discussions where our views are challenged and where we must defend our positions. But what if you could approach these moments with a deeper understanding of how to not only argue effectively, but to win consistently? What if the key to persuasion and success in any argument isn't just about having the most knowledge, but about how you use words, how you frame your ideas, and how you understand the psychology behind each exchange? How to Win Arguments. Use Words as Weapons is a guide designed to help you master the art of argumentation. It goes beyond the basics of presenting a logical case and delves into the psychological nuances of persuasion, emotional appeals, body language, and framing. It explores how words, when chosen carefully and used strategically, can serve as powerful tools in convincing others, shifting perspectives, and even controlling the narrative. The power of words cannot be overstated. Words are not just means of communication. They are instruments of influence. They can persuade, challenge, disarm, and inspire. Whether you're trying to convince a colleague to support your project, persuading a friend to see your point of view, or debating with someone on an important issue, your ability to wield language effectively will determine the outcome. But mastering this power requires more than just knowing what to say. It requires a deep understanding of the dynamics of argumentation, including how to manage tension, how to listen actively, how to frame your argument to align with the values of your audience, and how to use emotional appeals and logic in tandem. This book is not about manipulation or deceit. It's about honing your skills to engage in meaningful, constructive debates that leave all parties feeling respected, even if they don't agree. Winning an argument isn't just about defeating the other person. It's about making your case compelling, clear, and irresistible. In this book, we will break down each aspect of argumentation and communication, offering practical advice, real-world examples, and strategies that can be used in any situation. From understanding the psychology behind persuasion to using body language to reinforce your message, we'll cover all the tools necessary to not only win arguments, but to do so with integrity and poise. Ultimately, the ability to win arguments isn't just about gaining an advantage in a conversation. It's about gaining the trust, respect, and attention of others. It's about using words as a force for good, whether you're seeking to influence a policy, change someone's mind, or simply communicate more effectively in everyday situations. Are you ready to learn how to use words as your most powerful weapon? Let's dive in and discover the art of winning arguments. Chapter 1. The Power of Words. Words are not just a medium through which we communicate. They are tools of power. For centuries, warriors fought on battlefields with swords, guns, and artillery. Today, we fight battles of the mind, and our weapons are words. How we use language can shape reality, change minds, and win arguments. The most skilled manipulators of language wield it as one wields a sharp blade, precise, powerful, and deliberate. Think about a heated argument. More often than not, it's not the strongest person who wins, but the one who can articulate their point with clarity and authority. When emotions run high, logic often takes a backseat, and that's when words can be used most effectively. But this isn't about deceiving others with empty rhetoric or manipulative tactics. It's about mastering the art of persuasive communication, making your argument so compelling that it forces others to consider your point of view. The power of words lies in their ability to shape perception. Have you ever had a moment where a single phrase made you rethink your stance on something? Perhaps it was a quote from a book, a comment made by a colleague, or a remark from a friend. Words are potent, capable of shifting entire ideologies or reinforcing personal convictions. When engaged in an argument, the first step in winning is recognizing the power of the words you choose. You need to be aware of the effect your language will have on the person you're speaking to. Are you speaking to their logic, or are you appealing to their emotions? Is your tone calm and collected, or are you letting your frustration seep through? These subtleties matter because the way you frame your words can either invite cooperation or escalate conflict. But just as important is the understanding that words can be used to sway opinion even when the facts aren't entirely on your side. It's not about lying or twisting the truth, but rather about highlighting certain aspects of reality that support your position while minimizing or sidelining those that do not. The art of persuasion is as much about omission as it is about assertion. Consider, for example, the political world. Politicians are masters at framing debates in their favor, even when the facts seem to contradict them. They don't necessarily lie, but they often shape the conversation to their advantage. By using specific language, they create a narrative that their audience can rally behind. The same concept applies to everyday life. Whether you're negotiating a salary increase, trying to win a debate with a friend, or persuading someone to see your point of view, the words you choose will determine whether you succeed or fail. When you choose your words, think of them as your weapons. Are they sharpened to pierce through opposition with precision, or are they blunt and ineffective to win arguments? You must craft your language with care, constantly considering how it will be received by your audience. As we move forward in this book, we will explore various strategies and techniques that can enhance your verbal weaponry. We will dive into methods of persuasion, how to defuse hostility, how to control the flow of conversation, and most importantly, how to use your words to win arguments without relying on brute force or intimidation. But for now, remember this: the battle is fought not with fists but with words. To win, you must wield them with skill, intention, and purpose. Understanding the power of words is the first step in mastering the art of argumentation. Chapter 2: The Psychology of Persuasion. To win arguments, you must first understand the psychology of the people you're engaging with. Every person you speak to comes with their own set of beliefs, values, and emotional triggers. These factors play a huge role in how they perceive your words, and ultimately whether or not they're persuaded by your argument. Therefore, it's crucial to tailor your language to the psychological state of your audience. Humans are not purely rational beings. While we like to believe that logic governs our decisions, the reality is that emotions often play a far greater role in shaping our responses than we care to admit. This is why understanding the emotional triggers and biases of your audience can be a game changer when you're trying to win an argument. Consider the concept of cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that people use to make decisions quickly, but that can often lead them astray. One of the most relevant biases when it comes to arguments is the confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs. This is where the power of persuasion becomes most evident. If you can frame your argument in a way that resonates with what the other person already believes to be true, you greatly increase your chances of persuading them. But confirmation bias is not the only psychological principle at play in an argument. Another powerful concept to keep in mind is social proof, the idea that people are influenced by what others are doing. This is why groupthink can be so dangerous. If you can subtly indicate that your opinion is supported by the majority, or if you can show how your stance is aligned with social or moral norms, you can leverage social proof to tip the scales in your favor. On the other hand, people also have a tendency to react negatively when they feel threatened or attacked. The moment an argument turns combative, the psychological defenses of the person you are arguing with go up, and they become less likely to listen to reason. This is why it is critical to keep your arguments calm and measured, even when your emotions are running high. When your language is perceived as hostile, it puts the other person on the defensive, and you've already lost the argument. To truly win an argument, you must learn how to speak to the emotions and psychology of the other person without being manipulative or dishonest. It's about crafting your words in such a way that they resonate on a deeper, more subconscious level. Let's talk about empathy for a moment. While it might sound counterintuitive, putting yourself in the shoes of your opponent and understanding their point of view can actually make you a stronger debater. By recognizing the fears, values, and motivations that influence their beliefs, you can better frame your argument in a way that acknowledges their concerns. It's not about giving in to them, but rather finding common ground where both sides can agree. This principle is particularly important in high-stakes conversations where the goal is not simply to win, but to reach an outcome that benefits both parties. In these situations, using words as weapons is not about defeating the other person. It's about convincing them that your viewpoint is valid, fair, and ultimately in their best interest. You can still win the argument without leaving your opponent feeling belittled or dismissed. The psychological techniques used in arguments can be as simple as speaking in a way that promotes cooperation. Words that suggest partnership, mutual respect, and understanding often have a far greater impact than words that create division or contempt. This doesn't mean you shouldn't stand your ground or defend your position, but it does mean that your words should invite dialogue, not escalate conflict. Another important concept to remember is the power of storytelling. Humans are wired to respond to narratives. They make us feel, they make us empathize, and they make us remember. When you can weave a compelling story around your argument, you transform a dry debate into something engaging and memorable. Stories activate emotions and have the ability to bypass intellectual defenses, allowing your message to hit deeper than simple facts or figures. In the next chapter, we will delve deeper into how to structure your arguments for maximum effect, but for now, let the psychological framework guide your approach to language. When you understand what makes people tick, you can tailor your words to unlock the psychological doors that lead to persuasion. It's not just about saying the right thing. It's about saying it in a way that resonates with the mind and heart of the person you're trying to influence. Chapter 3. The structure of an effective argument. The key to winning an argument lies not only in what you say, but in how you say it. Having the right words is crucial, but how you structure them can make the difference between a compelling argument and a weak one. Crafting a solid, well-structured argument allows you to guide your audience through your reasoning, anticipate counterpoints, and persuade them in a way that feels natural and convincing. The first step in creating an effective argument is to clearly define your position. Too often, people enter arguments without having a clear idea of what they actually believe or what they want to achieve. If you don't have a specific point you're trying to make, it's easy to get lost in the weeds, which weakens your position. Before you even begin, ask yourself, what is the one thing I want the other person to understand or accept by the end of this conversation? Once you've clarified your stance, the next step is to present a well-organized sequence of points that support your argument. Think of your argument as a story with a beginning, middle, and end. You want to lead your audience through a series of logical steps that naturally build towards your conclusion. The structure should be easy to follow, each point leading to the next. If your argument feels disjointed or erratic, it's less likely to be convincing. Start by establishing your foundation. This is where you introduce the key facts or principles that form the basis of your argument. Here, you want to establish credibility. People need to believe that what you're saying is grounded in truth. This doesn't mean you have to be an expert, but you do need to ensure your information is accurate and relevant. Using reputable sources and citing statistics or studies can lend your argument authority. At the same time, you want to avoid overwhelming the listener with an excess of data. Focus on the most important and compelling pieces of evidence. Once your foundation is in place, you can build your argument with supporting points. Each supporting point should be a clear and concise reason why your position is valid. Think of these as the pillars that hold up your argument. If any pillar is weak or shaky, your entire argument becomes unstable. Each supporting point should be distinct but connected to the central message of your argument. After presenting your supporting points, it's important to anticipate and address potential counterarguments. This is one of the most powerful ways to demonstrate strength in your position. Acknowledging the opposing viewpoint and then refuting it shows that you understand the issue from all sides and that your perspective has been carefully considered. When you preemptively respond to common objections, you take away the opponent's ability to undermine your argument. It also shows that you are not merely trying to win for the sake of victory, but that you have carefully thought through your position. The final step in your argument structure is to reinforce your position and summarize your points. This is your closing statement, and it should be powerful. The conclusion should tie together all the points you've made and emphasize your main message. If you've done everything right up until this point, your closing statement should be a natural conclusion to the flow of the argument. A strong, clear conclusion leaves no room for ambiguity and makes your stance undeniable. While structure is essential, the delivery of your argument is just as important. Even the most logically sound argument can fail if it's delivered poorly. A good delivery involves pacing, tone, and body language. Speak with confidence, but not arrogance. Don't rush through your points, as this makes you seem unsure. Allow your words to land, and be mindful of how your audience is reacting. Are they following along? Are they engaging with your argument? Or are they starting to tune out? Additionally, keep in mind that an argument should never feel like a monologue. A debate or discussion involves two or more people, and the best arguments are often those that are dynamic and interactive. Be sure to listen actively to your opponent, ask clarifying questions, and adjust your approach based on their responses. A rigid, unyielding argument is unlikely to win, especially if your opponent feels unheard or misunderstood. An effective argument is more than just a set of logical steps. It's a conversation that persuades. It requires careful thought, preparation, and an awareness of both the structure of your argument and the dynamics of the interaction. By mastering the art of structuring your argument, you gain control of the narrative, direct the flow of conversation, and make it far more difficult for your opponent to derail your point. Remember, winning an argument isn't just about being right. It's about being persuasive. The structure of your argument is the blueprint, and your words are the bricks. When carefully crafted and strategically arranged, your argument becomes an imposing edifice that's difficult to break down. Chapter 4: The Art of Emotional Appeal. When most people think about winning an argument, they focus primarily on logic and facts. But in reality, the most persuasive arguments often tap into emotions. Whether we like it or not, emotions drive much of our decision-making. This is why appealing to the emotions of your audience is not just a clever tactic. It's a powerful and necessary part of persuasion. Understanding how to evoke the right emotions at the right moment can turn the tide of an argument in your favor. It's crucial to note that an emotional appeal doesn't mean manipulating people or resorting to cheap tricks. Instead, it's about understanding the emotions that are most relevant to the argument you're making and aligning your language in such a way that resonates with those emotions. Emotions like fear, hope, pride, guilt, and even anger can all be powerful motivators when used appropriately. Let's start with fear. Fear is an incredibly potent motivator, and it can be used strategically in arguments to make your position seem more urgent or necessary. For example, if you're trying to convince someone to act quickly, you might emphasize the risks of inaction or the dangers that could arise if they don't heed your advice. Fear doesn't always have to be negative, though. You can also play on the fear of missing out, the anxiety of being left behind, or the desire to avoid regret. When used tactfully, fear can push someone to make a decision they might otherwise hesitate to make. However, the key to using fear effectively is balance. Too much fear can overwhelm your audience and make them shut down or resist your message. A good emotional appeal always leaves room for hope or solution. If you create a sense of fear, be sure to follow it up with reassurance, showing that there's a way out or a positive path forward. Next, let's talk about hope. Hope is the opposite of fear, and it's just as powerful in an argument. Hope motivates people to take action, and to believe that things can improve. If you want to persuade someone to invest in a project, adopt a new idea, or change their behavior, you need to show them that there's a brighter future to look forward to. Present the possibilities that could arise from their decision and make them feel optimistic about the outcome. Hope is also an emotional trigger that can be tied to values such as progress, freedom, and personal growth. When you speak to people's aspirations, you tap into their desire to build a better life, to achieve something meaningful, or to be part of a greater cause. Painting a picture of the future that aligns with these hopes can make your argument far more compelling. Another key emotional trigger is pride. People like to feel proud of their decisions, and they often base their actions on what will make them feel good about themselves. In an argument, you can leverage pride by making your audience feel as though agreeing with you will elevate their status or contribute to their self-image. Whether it's about standing for something important, demonstrating intelligence, or doing the right thing, appealing to pride can make someone more willing to adopt your perspective. When you appeal to someone's pride, you make them feel like they are making a decision that reflects well on them. In many ways, it's about making them feel that they are the hero of the story. This technique works particularly well when your audience values honor, integrity, or belonging to a certain group. If you can position your argument as something that aligns with their identity, you tap into a deep emotional need for affirmation. Guilt, while a more delicate emotion to work with, can also be used to your advantage. Guilt is often used in arguments where the goal is to persuade someone to change their behavior for ethical or moral reasons. It's about making the other person aware of the consequences of their actions, particularly how those actions might harm others or contradict their own values. If someone feels guilty about their behavior, they may be more inclined to change it. However, guilt must be used with caution. Too much guilt can lead to resentment or defensiveness. The key is to make the other person reflect on their actions without making them feel completely responsible for every negative outcome. Guilt can be a powerful motivator, but it needs to be framed in a way that inspires reflection and growth rather than shame. Lastly, we can talk about anger. Anger, like fear, can be a powerful force for action. It can ignite a desire to change the status quo, challenge unfairness, or fight against perceived injustice. If you're arguing for a cause that requires action, whether it's political, social, or personal, invoking righteous anger can fuel motivation and rally people to your side. However, just like fear, anger can backfire if not handled correctly. If someone feels personally attacked or insulted, they may shut down or become defensive. To use anger effectively, you must frame it in a way that targets a broader issue rather than an individual. Instead of directing anger at the person you're arguing with, direct it at the problem or the injustice. When people feel that their anger is valid and focused on the right issue, they are more likely to join your cause. Using emotions in arguments is a fine art. While emotions can be powerful tools, they also require careful handling. The best emotional appeals are those that feel authentic and connected to the values and concerns of the audience. They're not manipulative, but rather they speak to the deeper, often unspoken forces that shape our thoughts and decisions. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to refine your language to maximize its emotional impact, ensuring that every word you use aligns with the emotion you wish to evoke. But for now, remember that emotions are not only a side effect of a good argument, they are a crucial component of persuasion. When used thoughtfully, they can help you win any argument. Chapter 5, The Role of Logic and Evidence. While emotional appeal can be a powerful weapon in an argument, it is a logical foundation that gives your argument credibility. Without strong reasoning and evidence to back up your claims, no amount of emotional appeal will win you the argument. Logic provides structure, clarity, and justification for your position, transforming what might be a subjective opinion into something more objective and compelling. When engaging in an argument, it's essential to recognize that logic and emotion work hand in hand, but one cannot be ignored at the expense of the other. Too much logic can make you sound detached or unrelatable, while relying too heavily on emotion can make your argument seem irrational. The key is to balance both aspects, but all begins with building a rock-solid logical foundation. The first step in constructing a logical argument is clarity of thought. Before you present your case, take the time to carefully organize your thoughts. What exactly are you arguing for? What is the central claim you want to prove? Make sure that your argument is not vague or ambiguous. It should be clear and specific. The more precise you are in defining your position, the easier it will be to support it with evidence and reason. Next, you need to build your argument step by step, using premises that logically support your conclusion. Every argument has a structure, and you must ensure that each part of your argument follows logically from the one before it. The simplest way to do this is by using syllogisms, basic logical structures where two premises lead to a conclusion. For example, all humans are mortal. Socrates is a human. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. In this case, the conclusion, Socrates is mortal, is logically derived from the two premises. The same structure applies to any argument you make. You must ensure that your premises are true and relevant to the conclusion you're attempting to draw. If your premises are weak or faulty, the entire argument crumbles. But simply presenting a logical argument isn't enough. Your reasoning must be based on credible, reliable evidence. This is where facts, data, and research come into play. Evidence not only strengthens your argument, but it also lends you authority. People are far more likely to believe you when you can show them concrete proof of what you're saying. This could come in the form of statistics, studies, expert opinions, historical examples, or even personal experiences. However, not all evidence is created equal. Some evidence carries more weight than others. Statistical data is often seen as a particularly strong form of evidence because it's concrete and verifiable. For instance, if you're arguing for benefits of a healthy diet, citing a scientific study showing how a specific diet improves health can be far more persuasive than simply stating that eating healthy is good for you. The more robust your evidence, the more compelling your argument will be. At the same time, you must also be cautious about the sources of your evidence. If you rely on unreliable or biased sources, your argument will lose credibility. Make sure that the evidence you present comes from reputable sources, and when possible, cite the original study, expert, or data point. This not only strengthens your argument, but also prevents others from dismissing it due to a perceived lack of credibility. Another important aspect of logic in arguments is recognizing and addressing logical fallacies. A logical fallacy is a flaw in reasoning that weakens an argument. These are common traps that many fall into during debates, and knowing how to spot and avoid them is crucial for constructing a solid argument. Some common logical fallacies include ad hominem, attacking the person making the argument rather than addressing the argument itself; straw man, misrepresenting your opponent's argument to make it easier to attack; appeal to authority, relying on the opinion of an authority figure as proof without considering the merits of the argument itself; false dilemma, presenting two options as the only possibilities when there are others. Being able to identify and avoid these fallacies not only strengthens your argument, but also positions you as a more credible and thoughtful debater. If you can spot a fallacy in your opponent's reasoning, you can call attention to it, which can significantly undermine their position. One of the most powerful ways to integrate logic into an argument is through the use of analogies. Analogies allow you to explain complex concepts in a way that is easy to understand, and they can help clarify your reasoning. A well-crafted analogy can simplify your argument and make it more relatable to your audience. For example, comparing the fragility of glass to the weakness of a flawed argument makes the concept tangible and accessible. However, analogies should be used with caution. They must be relevant and appropriate to the argument at hand. A poorly chosen analogy can weaken your argument by oversimplifying or distorting the issue. Another effective technique for making your argument logically sound is the use of counterarguments. Anticipating and addressing potential counterarguments not only shows that you consider the issue from all angles, but also allows you to fortify your own position. By acknowledging objections and then refuting them with logical reasoning, you demonstrate that your argument holds up even in the face of criticism. In debates, your ability to deconstruct the opposing side argument is just as important as presenting your own. The strength of your argument will often be determined not just by how well you present your case, but by how well you can defend it against attack. Ultimately, the power of logic in an argument lies in its ability to persuade based on reason. When your argument is logically sound, well supported by evidence, and free of fallacies, it becomes incredibly difficult to refute. But logic alone is not enough. It must be balanced with emotional appeal, strong delivery, and careful consideration of your audience's psychological makeup. Together, these elements create an argument that not only persuades, but compels others to adopt your point of view. Chapter 6. The Influence of Body Language. An argument isn't just about the words you speak. It's about how you present yourself. Body language plays a critical role in the way your argument is perceived, and mastering nonverbal communication can be just as powerful as mastering verbal techniques. How you use your body can either reinforce your message or undercut it. In this chapter, we'll explore how body language influences arguments and how you can use it to your advantage. The first thing to understand about body language is that it is often more honest than the words coming out of your mouth. People are naturally good at reading nonverbal cues, and even when you try to hide your emotions, your body might give you away. This means that if there's a mismatch between what you're saying and how you're saying it, your audience will likely trust the body language over the words. For instance, if you're trying to argue a point with confidence, but your posture is hunched and your hands are trembling, the person you're arguing with might doubt your conviction, even if your words are firm. On the other hand, if your body is open, your posture is tall, and your gestures are deliberate, it enhances the perception that you believe in what you're saying, making your argument more compelling. One of the most effective ways to use body language in an argument is through open posture. Standing or sitting with an open posture, arms uncrossed, shoulders back and chest open, makes you appear confident and receptive. People are more likely to listen to you and take you seriously when you don't appear closed off or defensive. Crossed arms, on the other hand, often signal that you are shutting down the conversation, either because you're not interested or because you're feeling threatened. In an argument, crossed arms can make you seem closed-minded or unapproachable, and that's the last impression you want to give. Your facial expressions are also incredibly important in arguments. A simple smile can show warmth to make the conversation feel less adversarial, while a furrowed brow can indicate that you're deep in thought or genuinely concerned about the issue at hand. Smiling, when appropriate, helps to convey a sense of calm and friendliness, and it can soften the emotional intensity of the discussion. Conversely, frowning or scowling can escalate tension and make the argument feel more personal. Another key aspect of body language in an argument is eye contact. Maintaining steady eye contact demonstrates that you are confident, engaged, and trustworthy. It shows that you're fully present in the conversation and that you're not avoiding the issue. However, be careful not to overdo it. Intense. Prolonged eye contact can feel confrontational, while avoiding eye contact altogether may make you seem evasive or unsure of yourself. The key is to strike a balance. Enough eye contact to convey confidence and sincerity, but not so much that it feels like a challenge. The tone of your voice is another powerful tool in an argument. The way you speak can influence how your words are received. A calm, steady voice conveys authority and control, while a shaky or erratic voice might make you seem uncertain or emotionally overwhelmed. Varying your tone for emphasis can also add nuance to your argument, making it more engaging. A well-timed pause can create suspense, give your words weight, and signal to your audience that what you're about to say is important. Gestures also play a significant role in communication. When you speak with purpose and use deliberate gestures, you are perceived as more credible and engaged in the conversation. However, mindless or exaggerated gestures can be distracting or even make you appear insincere. The key is to use gestures that complement what you're saying. For example, point and emphasize a key point, or using your hands to describe something visually can help clarify your argument and keep your audience engaged. In addition to these individual elements, it's also important to be aware of mirroring. Mirroring is the unconscious act of mimicking the other person's body language. This can create a sense of rapport and alignment, making the person you're arguing with feel more comfortable and understood. If the person you're debating is nodding, for instance, it may be effective for you to do the same, as it subtly signals agreement or understanding. However, mirroring should be done subtly. Overly copying someone's movements can come off as disingenuous or manipulative. Finally, pace and movement in an argument can influence how your words are received. Speaking at a steady, moderate pace conveys control and clarity. If you speak too quickly, it may make you sound nervous or unsure. If you speak too slowly, you might lose the attention of your audience. Likewise, moving around the space during an argument can give you an air of confidence and authority, but too much movement or pacing can suggest agitation or lack of focus. Understanding the impact of body language on your arguments allows you to control not only how others perceive you, but also how you feel about yourself during the conversation. For example, standing tall with your shoulders back can improve your posture and boost your confidence. Using open body language not only makes you appear more approachable and confident, but also helps to reduce your own stress and anxiety in high-pressure situations. In conclusion, mastering body language is essential for becoming a more persuasive communicator. Words may be your primary weapon in an argument, but your body language acts as the armor, reinforcing or undermining your message. Be mindful of how you use your body in arguments, and use it to enhance the power of your words. Chapter 7, The Art of Listening. In an argument, winning isn't just about speaking well. It's also about listening. Far too often, we focus entirely on what we're going to say next, anxiously preparing our counterarguments instead of paying attention to what the other person is actually saying. However, truly effective arguments require more than just dominating conversation. They require an acute awareness of the other side's perspective. The art of listening can be just as powerful a weapon as the art of speaking, and when mastered, it can give you a significant edge in any debate. The first step in becoming a better listener is to embrace active listening. Active listening is about more than simply hearing the words that come out of the other person's mouth. It's about genuinely understanding their perspective and responding thoughtfully. It requires you to engage both mentally and emotionally with what the other person is saying, and it involves maintaining eye contact, nodding in acknowledgement, and refraining from interrupting them mid-sentence. This shows respect for their viewpoint and encourages them to open up more, making it easier for you to form a stronger response. Listening actively also means withholding judgment and avoiding assumptions. It's easy to jump to conclusions based on our own biases or emotional triggers, but doing so only sabotages the quality of the conversation. Instead, focus on gathering information and understanding the argument fully before reacting. Only when you have a clear picture of the other person's point of view should you begin to craft your counterarguments. One powerful technique for listening effectively is paraphrasing. When the other person finishes speaking, you can summarize their main points in your own words, demonstrating that you've truly understood what they're saying. For example, you might say, "So what I'm hearing is that you believe the solution will be ineffective because of X, Y, and Z, correct?" Paraphrasing not only helps clarify the other person's position, but it also gives them a chance to correct you if you've misunderstood something. This builds rapport and creates a more collaborative atmosphere in the discussion. When you paraphrase, you're also subtly showing the other person that you value their perspective. This creates a more open space for dialogue and can encourage them to listen to your side more attentively. People are more likely to listen to you when they feel heard and respected, making your own argument that much more persuasive. A critical aspect of listening is learning to identify the underlying emotions behind the other person's words. Often, people don't just argue over facts, they argue over feelings. Are they speaking out of frustration, fear, or pride? Understanding the emotional drivers behind their argument allows you to respond in a way that directly addresses their concerns. For example, if someone's argument is rooted in fear, you can appeal to their hope or reassure them with facts. If they're motivated by pride, you might frame your response in a way that respects their intelligence and positions them as a partner rather than an adversary. Another important element of listening is silence. When engaged in a heated argument, it can be tempting to fill every pause with words, but silence can be a powerful tool in itself. Sometimes, just allowing a moment of quiet gives the other person space to reflect on their words or reconsider their position. Silence also demonstrates patience and control, signaling that you are confident enough in your argument to let the conversation unfold naturally. Rather than rushing to counter every point, use the silence to reflect on the conversation and compose a thoughtful response. It's also essential to listen to the unsaid, what the other person may be avoiding or too uncomfortable to express. People often provide subtle clues through tone, body language, or slight hints in their words. These unspoken cues can give you insight into their true feelings, motivations, and potential vulnerabilities. If you pick up on these, you can adjust your approach to better address their concerns or neutralize their resistance. By being attuned to what isn't being said, you gain an advantage in the conversation and can often guide it more effectively. Listening with empathy can also make a huge difference in how an argument unfolds. Empathetic listening involves not just understanding the other person's words, but also making an effort to emotionally connect with them. This doesn't mean agreeing with everything they say, but it does mean acknowledging their feelings and showing that you care about their perspective. People tend to let down their defenses when they feel that their emotions are understood, making it more likely that they will be receptive to your own point of view. Finally, an essential part of listening in an argument is recognizing when to ask questions. Asking thoughtful, open-ended questions not only helps you gain a deeper understanding of the other person's perspective, but also subtly shifts the conversation away from a confrontational back and forth. Rather than simply defending your own position, you can engage in a more collaborative dialogue. Questions like, "Can you tell me more about why you think that?" Or "What led you to that conclusion?" Invite the other person to elaborate on their reasoning, and they give you the opportunity to explore the nuances of their argument. This positions you as open-minded and genuinely interested in their viewpoint, which builds rapport and trust. Listening actively and empathetically allows you to not only build a stronger connection with your opponent, but also to refine your own argument. By fully understanding the other person's position, you are better equipped to identify weaknesses in their reasoning or find common ground. Furthermore, listening gives you the opportunity to anticipate their next move and craft your counterarguments accordingly. In summary, the art of listening is crucial in winning arguments. It's not enough to just speak well and present your case. You must also understand the other side to respond effectively. Active listening, empathy, and the ability to read between the lines will give you the edge in any argument, making you a more persuasive and powerful communicator. Listening isn't just a passive activity. It's an active strategy that enhances the impact of your words and helps guide the conversation toward your desired outcome. Chapter 8: Diffusing Conflict and Managing Tension. In any argument, tension is inevitable. Disagreements naturally trigger strong emotions, And those emotions can often escalate the situation to a point where the focus shifts from productive conversation to a heated battle. When this happens, the quality of the argument deteriorates and it becomes much harder to persuade or win the other person over. This is why one of the most valuable skills you can possess is the ability to diffuse conflict and manage tension effectively. The first and most important rule when tensions rise in an argument is to stay calm. Easier said than done, right? When emotions run high, it's tempting to react impulsively or to mirror the other person's heightened emotions. However, this only serves to escalate the situation and makes it more difficult to regain control of the conversation. If you remain calm, composed, and in control of your emotions, you instantly position yourself as a confident and rational individual. Traits that are far more likely to persuade than a defensive, reactive stance. To maintain your calm, it's essential to breathe. Deep breathing has been scientifically proven to reduce stress and promote a sense of calm. When you feel your emotions bubbling up, take a moment to pause. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. This will help reset your nervous system, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. If you can master the art of breathing through conflict, you will have a far better chance of controlling the argument's direction. Next, it's crucial to acknowledge the other person's emotions. One of the main reasons arguments get out of control is that the other person feels unheard or invalidated. A simple way to diffuse tension is by recognizing their feelings without immediately contradicting them. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but acknowledging their perspective can go a long way in reducing defensiveness and opening up space for more productive discussion. For example, if someone is angry or upset, you might say, "I can see that you're really passionate about this issue, and I understand why it's important to you." This approach shows that you're actively listening and empathize with their emotions, even if you don't agree with their viewpoint. When you make the other person feel heard, they are far more likely to listen to your side as well. Another powerful tool for diffusing conflict is to ask open-ended questions. When you ask questions like, "Can you explain more about why you feel that way?" or "What led you to that conclusion?" You're not only giving the other person a chance to express themselves, but you're also subtly shifting the conversation from confrontation to collaboration. By asking questions, you create a space for dialogue and show that you're willing to understand their perspective. This often reduces hostility and opens the door to finding common ground. Sometimes, however, you may encounter individuals who are unwilling to calm down or listen. In such cases, agreeing to disagree may be your best option. If the tension is too high and it's clear that the conversation is going nowhere, don't be afraid to pause the discussion and suggest revisiting it at a later time. This demonstrates maturity and a desire for constructive dialogue, rather than engaging in a futile argument. You might say something like, "I think we're both getting a bit too worked up to have a productive conversation right now. How about we take a break and come back to this when we're both in a better state of mind?" This allows emotions to settle and provides an opportunity for both parties to reconsider their positions in a calmer environment. Deflecting personal attacks is another critical skill to manage tension in an argument. Often, when an argument gets heated, people resort to personal insults or attacks, which can derail the discussion entirely. If you respond in kind, it only exacerbates the situation. Instead, stay focused on the issue at hand and avoid getting dragged into personal or inflammatory remarks. For example, if someone attacks your character, you might respond by saying, "I understand that you're frustrated, but let's focus on the issue rather than on personal attacks." This reasserts the purpose of the conversation and keeps it on track. Another technique that can help diffuse tension is humor. Humor, when used appropriately, can break the ice and create a more relaxed atmosphere. However, humor needs to be used cautiously. If done too early or in a way that seems dismissive, it can backfire. A well-timed joke or lighthearted comment can defuse a tense situation and remind both parties that the conversation is not about winning, but about understanding each other. Humor can create a sense of camaraderie and lower the emotional temperature of the conversation. Alongside humor, physical space is important in managing tension. If you sense that the argument is escalating, try to put some physical distance between yourself and the other person. Too much proximity can make the other person feel cornered or overwhelmed, which can intensify their emotional response. If possible, take a step back or suggest moving to a different setting. This gives both parties the opportunity to gain perspective and calm down. Using silence strategically can also be an effective way to de-escalate conflict. When emotions are running high, silence can help create a moment of reflection. By allowing the other person to stew in their own thoughts, you may give them the time they need to reconsider their position. You can also use silence to signal that you are giving them the space to express themselves fully before responding. When used effectively, silence can disarm the emotional intensity and promote more thoughtful dialogue. Finally, remember that respect is key. No matter how heated the argument gets, treating the other person with respect is non-negotiable. Insults, condescension, and dismissiveness only lead to more conflict. Even if you disagree with their position, acknowledge their right to have their opinions and maintain a sense of dignity in the conversation. When both parties feel respected, the likelihood of successful resolution increases exponentially. In conclusion, defusing conflict and managing tension is an art in itself. It requires patience, empathy, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. By focusing on maintaining composure, acknowledging the other person's emotions, using strategic questions and silence, and keeping the conversation respectful, you can navigate even the most challenging arguments with grace. By defusing tension effectively, you turn the argument into an opportunity for growth and mutual understanding rather than a battleground. Chapter 10. Closing the argument, the final push. In any debate or discussion, the final moments are crucial. How you conclude your argument can have a lasting impact on the other person's perception of you, your argument, and the entire conversation. This is the moment where you solidify your position and either persuade your opponent or leave them questioning their stance. A strong conclusion is often the deciding factor between winning or losing an argument, and it requires careful thought and strategy. The first step in closing your argument effectively is to summarize your key points. By revisiting the main arguments you've made, you remind your opponent of the strength and coherence of your position. A well-organized summary reinforces the logical flow of your argument and demonstrates that you've made your case clearly and persuasively. For instance, if you've been discussing a policy, you might say, "So, to recap, we've discussed how this policy will reduce costs, create jobs, and improve the environment." This not only reinforces your key points, but also gives your opponent an opportunity to reflect on what's been said. However, don't just summarize your points mechanically. Take a moment to emphasize the most compelling aspects of your argument. Highlight the evidence that supports your case and reiterate why your stance is not just valid, but superior to any alternatives. This is your final chance to remind the other person why they should agree with you. You might say, "The facts speak for themselves. The data shows this policy has already worked in other countries, and it's clear that it will lead to positive outcomes here as well." While emphasizing your position, you also want to make sure your conclusion addresses any lingering concerns or objections. If your opponent has raised valid points throughout the conversation, it's important to briefly acknowledge them and offer a concise rebuttal. By addressing objections head-on, you demonstrate that your argument is well-rounded and that you've considered the opposing viewpoint. This is where the earlier techniques of active listening and empathy come into play. For example, if your opponent expressed concerns about the cost of implementing a policy, you could close by saying, "I understand that the initial cost might seem high, but in the long term, this policy will save money and create opportunities for growth." This not only neutralizes their objection, but also strengthens your overall position. Another key element of a strong closing is to use a call to action. After making your case, it's important to guide your audience toward the next step, whether it's convincing your opponent to adopt your viewpoint, persuading them to take action, or simply encouraging further discussion. A call to action provides direction and purpose to your argument. A call to action could be as simple as, "Now that we've discussed this, I think it's time we seriously consider implementing this policy." Or, "I'd like you to think about what we've discussed and see how it aligns with your own values." The goal is to leave your opponent with something to reflect on or a course of action to take. Effective closing also involves using strong, confident language. Your tone should be assertive, but not aggressive. You want to leave the conversation with the sense that you have made your case and that you are secure in your position. A confident closing statement like, "Given all the points we've discussed, I'm confident that this approach will lead to positive change," signals that you believe in the validity of your argument and are standing firm. It's also important to remain gracious in your conclusion, regardless of whether you think you've won the argument. Maintaining a sense of professionalism and respect helps ensure that the discussion ends on a positive note, and it leaves the door open for future conversations. You don't have to agree with your opponent, but you can still express appreciation for dialogue and the exchange of ideas. A simple, "I appreciate you engaging in this conversation with me," or "Thank you for considering my perspective," can leave a lasting impression. A final and often overlooked component of closing an argument is to use the element of finality. When you close, do so decisively, signaling that you've made your final point and that the conversation has reached its conclusion. Avoid dragging out the discussion or leaving too much room for back and forth at this stage. A conclusive statement, such as, "In conclusion, we've covered the key issues, and it's clear that this approach is the best path forward," leaves no ambiguity and closes a conversation with authority. Lastly, understand that not every argument needs to be won immediately. Sometimes, the most powerful way to close an argument is to simply plant the seed and leave the other person to think. Not every debate has to result in an immediate resolution. Sometimes, the most effective way to win an argument is to leave your opponent questioning their assumptions, giving them the space to reconsider their position on their own terms. In some cases, agreeing to revisit the conversation at a later date can also be an effective closing strategy. If emotions are still high, or if more information is needed, you can suggest that the discussion be continued later, showing that you are open to further dialogue. For example, you could say, "I understand this is a complex issue, and it's worth revisiting when we both have more time to think about it." This approach not only closes the argument on a respectful note, but also indicates maturity and a willingness to engage in thoughtful, ongoing discussion. In summary, closing an argument is a delicate balance of confidence, respect, and clarity. By summarizing your points, addressing objections, offering a call to action, and maintaining graciousness, you can close your argument in a way that leaves a lasting impression and strengthens your position. The final moments of an argument are critical. They are where you leave your mark and guide the conversation to a resolution, whether it's in your favor or not. Mastering the art of closing ensures that you not only present a persuasive argument, but also leave the door open for future opportunities, making you a formidable communicator in any situation.